half of my friends from the day. It's like the sorts of things, mental things, and I had never before, and I felt so but he's part of the
Thank you so much for coming out here tonight. My name is Erica. I am the events coordinator for Books for Magic. Before we get started, I did want to go over some housekeeping points towards the end of the conversation. We will be doing an audience hand-raised Q&A, so just now to ask and raise your hand once the time comes. After the talk tonight, Fran will be signing and personalizing books at our front check-in. Additionally, we have extra copies of The World Keeps Ending and The World Goes On available for purchase from my colleague Anna, who can check-in. If you are joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we highly encourage you to buy a copy of The World Keeps Ending and The World Goes On online using the link in the live stream description. Tonight, it is my privilege to introduce this star-studded lineup of poets. Franny Choi, Choi, Aracelis, Sarah Kay, and Jose Olivares.
Yay!
Discuss Franny's new collection, The World Keeps Ending and The World Goes On. Franny Choi is the author of two previous poetry collections, Soft Science and Floating Brilliant Dawn, as well as one chapbook, Death by Sex Machine. She is a Kundiman Fellow, a 2019 Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellow, a recipient of Princeton University's Holmes National Poetry Prize, and a graduate of the University of Michigan's Helen Zell Writers Program. Her poems have appeared in the New York Times, The Nation, Paris Review, and elsewhere. Noah Adam Choi is the author of Cut to Bloom, the winner of the 2019 Write Bloody Prize. They received an MFA in poetry from Sarah Lawrence College, and their work appears in Barrow Street, Blackbird, Pleiades, The Rumpus, Slip This Rock, and others. Noah was shortlisted for the Poetry International Prize and received the 2021 Ellen Conway Kennedy Poetry Prize, alongside fellowships from Kundiman, the Sewanee Writers Conference, and the Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing. They worked as the director of the Progressive Teaching Institute and associate director of DEI at a school in New York City. Aracelis is the author of 3 books of poems, most recently The Black Maria, for which she was a finalist for the 2019 Newstat Prize. Her recent work has been published in Asher, the Massachusetts Review, and the Paris Review Online. Girmay is on the editorial board of the African Poetry Book Fund. With her sister, she collaborated on the picture book, What Do You Know? Sarah Kay is a writer, performer, and educator from New York City. Sarah has a master's degree in the art of teaching from Brown University and has been a head book writer in residence, a Southern B artist in residence, a New America Fellow, and a Kundiman Fellow. She is the author of 4 books of poetry, Be No Matter the Wreckage, The Type and All Our Wild Wonder. Sarah is the founder and co-director of Project Voice, an organization that uses poetry to entertain, educate, and empower students and educators worldwide. One more, Jose Olivares, debut book of poems, Citizen Illegal, was a finalist for the Penn Van Stein Award and a winner of the 2018 Chicago Review of Books Poetry Prize. It was named a top book of 2018 by the New York Journal, NPR, and the New York Public Library. Along with Felicia Chavez and Julia Perdomo, he co-edited the poetry anthology, The Breakbeat Poet, Volume 4, Latin Next. His second book of poems, Promises of Gold, will be published in February 2023. So without any further ado,
Hello. Wow, that's loud. My name is Jose Guadalupe Olivares. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here with all of you today, celebrating Franny Choi's new book. Make some noise for Franny. I just want to say that when I started writing, the thing that I was actually interested in had less to do with writing and creative work than really what I was really interested in was like how to build power, you know what I mean? And like how to organize and how writing and culture work might be useful in an organizational setting. That was what really was important to me. And I always thought that I would have to make a choice between one or the other, and it wasn't until I met Franny and until I started really reading Franny's work that I learned and realize that you didn't have to make a choice, that you could really work at both. And so I'm so grateful and so honored to be here as part of your book release, and I'm so happy for you. And I'm gonna read a couple poems and then pass on the mic. So this first poem is called Por Siempre. The poem is written by the son of immigrants. The poem wants to thank his parents for migrating to the United States. The poem knows his parents were thinking, one day mi hijo va a poder escribir los versos más tristes while riding across the border. The poem knows he gets paid $5 every time he writes the word border. Border, 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 border. The poem knows he gets paid $10 every time he speaks Spanish. Frontera, 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 frontera. The poem never turns down overtime. The poem is angry his parents migrated to the United States. The poem knows in Mexico he would have been unburdened with being a minority. Oh, to be born lowercase, lower caste, lower class. The poem confesses to never riding across the border in the trunk of a car. It happened to someone else. The poem understands relation is relative. Relatives don't understand the poem. Hijo, why did you go to Harvard just to stay poor? The poem knows he will never know promises his parents made to stay alive. The poem wears a mask. The mask is a bouquet of gardenias. The bouquet is for your protection. If the poem ever dropped the bouquet, the only thing remaining would be a fist. All right, this poem is called Upward Mobility, and it's inspired by being broke. Upward mobility. Dancing to avoid the fluttering of roaches, the boy brushes his teeth with one eye on the sink, and one eye on the bugs, and one eye on his teeth, and one eye on time, and one eye on homework, and one eye on his brothers, and one eye on the future, and one eye on the sink, and one eye on the bugs, and one eye on his teeth, and one eye on time, and one eye on homework, and one eye on his brothers. Years later, when his friends joke about how he has poor people teeth, his head will shed its skin to reveal 5,000 eyes the size of cockroach hearts.
Oh my God.
All right, this will be my last poem. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited for you all to get to listen to the rest of the lineup. This is a sonnet. It's called Poem with a Little Less Aggression. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism, is something I heard a homie say once. There is no ethical consumption. There is no ethical consumption, I parroted. Watch my mouth and you miss my hands. I cash every check and check my balance and balance my conscience. Under capitalism, we must all do what we must. There is only one truth under capitalism, says the parrot in the teeth of the fox, in the mouth of the bear. The bear wants you to know he suffers too, anxiety and global warming. So watch your judgments. There are no truths under capitalism. I can't help the poor if I'm one of them, says the billionaire. I can't help the poor if I'm one of them, says the banker signing off on my family's foreclosure. It's true, you know, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. Some truths are useless. Thank you all so much for listening to me. When they asked if anybody wanted to go first, I was like, oh, absolutely, please. I do not want to follow any of these people. And so it is my great joy, for many reasons, to pass the mic to our next reader, the incredible Aracelis Germán.
It's so good to be here tonight. Thank you so much, Jose. It's incredible to hear those poems. Thank you, Franny, for this book. Oh
Yes!
my God. It's incredible. It's incredible. I love what you said about power, Jose, and how I've been sharing this. I think I got it 2 weeks ago, maybe, a week and a half ago. And I'm like, oh, listen to this. Oh, I passed it around my class twice. There's so much here, but one of the things that I think is making me run to other people is the sustenance. That there's something when somebody speaks the truth, like in their language, it is sustenance at the end and after the end of the world. And I cannot thank you enough for this fierce. It's incredible.
Yes.
I brought like my whole trapper keeper up here. I'm gonna read 2 poems. They're part of a long work thinking about mother lines and my mother's line. I enter then this motherhood on my knees and hide the clove inside of one name, the secret head inside of one. Other things I cannot know, like what it was to carry the purple root. Such is loss, an egg, a jar of smoke. We stood in line. When it was our time, there was no long road leading us to each other. This is my poem, my luck. These are my hands. This one of my cups is empty, but for your names next to the clouds inside orange trees. I have seen them, mothers of mothers of mothers, at the train stations and in the park, smoothing flat broad sheets across the grass. I lift the baby to my hip and take my son's hand. One mother cannot be enough. I have one mother now, you know, but once there were more. They were for me once as I am for my children. It is true I am a rhyme, but a rhyme looking back. Though my two pull from me and I am frictive with line, haggard with milk, and each breast it hisses out of time.
Wow.
Thank you. And this poem connected to that. Thinking about the mothers, my mother in particular, but the mothers. And though she was the river silt and gold, and though she was the drop of rain and just a skinny bitty dandelion of a girl, anytime they needed someone to carry the pots, to catch the knife, to walk in front, it was her they put. And though she was the shriek, and was the war and not supposed to be the flower, and was their dog and was not free, what wore her head she could not lose, and what opened her free she pressed inside my tamarind, my motherling, my yam astride the dark. She wrote her root into the dirt, and though, and though, and though, and though, and though, the green she was a while. It is my joy and honor to get to pass the mic to Noah Adam Choi.
Can we please give it up one more time for Aracelis? So you know when you have to like not even start dog-earing a book,
Yeah.
otherwise you'd have just like dog-eared the whole book. That's definitely what I felt reading Franny's. And the last poem she writes for the as yet unbuilt museum of what we had to survive to make paradise from its ruin. And this book certainly acts as a guide to that kind of alchemy. And you know, Franny has had such a huge impact on my life as a writer. To see a fellow queer Korean American out here being so unabashedly herself and also so freaking cool and brilliant. You really have paved the way for so many of our voices. So I read these two poems in honor of all that incredible work that you've done. 진짜 수고했어요. When you put on your binder smelling like lavender, it's the same day you call yourself by your old pronouns, as if they were makeup you put on in the dark, or shoes that won't pinch if you stand still, or the way you pick up the phone using your ex's last name. Your mother's arsenal of words for gender-neutral children grows each day like tomatoes that burst green in your mouth. And when you say thank you, she'll act like it's no big deal, say, of course, and erase the months it took to tell her about how she's always the last one to know. You have big plans and how you'll tell her about top surgery, how you call it back pain. Then in a few months, explain how you've been waiting so long, like how you dream about dancing in a crowded hall when the pandemic breaks. You search the internet for more musky scents, bergamot and sandalwood. Get annoyed to see lotion gendered like necklaces and notebooks and vitamins and earplugs and hammers and coffee mugs. And you think maybe you should go back to pretending you are fine with the long hair and the big boobs and pants with big pockets, like you are watching a butterfly hatch and hoping it'll never see its cocoon or know its wings can spread wide when the big hop comes, or the years of training yourself to ignore your chest as if it was a borrowed book or Tupperware you have to return to the neighbor, or the stain on the carpet everyone just walks around. The real question is, do you wear your binder to the new hairdresser, who is Korean and might look at the picture of the bearded actor you bring in like it's kimchi and a hamburger, who might have a store full of ajumas who will stare and make small efforts to whisper, or she will be like your mom, not understanding you, but not hating it, tilting her head at all she cannot name. You're either gutting the fish and leaving it for flies, or shoveling the snow off of your sidewalk to get to your mailbox. But either way, you need to get your hair cut back from its quarantine shag, so you soothe your dry skin, flatten your chest so you can bear the mirror, and walk out the door. So I started testosterone about a year ago, and there's this period of time before I got top surgery where, I would look in the mirror and recognize more and more of myself, but I also felt like I had yet to arrive yet, right? I wasn't completely comfortable. I still felt like who I saw was very incongruous with who I felt I was inside. So this is a little bit about that. They say it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. It really does feel like doing stand-up comedy.
Stand-up poetry.
They say it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. Dear voice box shaped like a violin's neck, now thickening with tea. I can't say I've ever loved you, unless love means missing the teeth I gave to the tooth fairy for how naturally they left my mouth. Unless love is a Polaroid and not a reel you can rewind or repeat. I dreamed I was flat like a new sheet of paper. I dreamed my voice was a bear or a basement or even my father saying hello. If you say goodbye to something you never loved, is it still called loss? If you say goodbye to something you've never been, is it still called tradition? A cow is kept in a cage the size of its body and called veal. A cage is caught inside an animal and called a body. It is better to be safe than sorry. Safe like triple washed E. coli spinach. Safe like ovaries in Texas or Arkansas or Kansas. Safe like giving a knife to your sadness. If you give a mouse a cookie, it will ask for a syringe. A binder that bathes your body in bright bliss, but only if you bear the bite of it all day. If you give a mouse a bite, it will ask you to say its name right and loudly. If you give a mouse a right, you better teach it how to miss it when it's taken back away. If you give a mouse a way to be a mouse and not a foot or a sound or a slice of mud, don't ask it to be okay with a voice that squeaks and bells like a completely different season. Don't ask if it likes its cookie. Just let it sit on the greener side, having lost what it did not love. Not safe, but definitely not sorry.
Hell yeah.
One way to introduce this next person coming up to the stage. And I'm thinking of a particular mutual friend of mine.
Oh, no.
So please give it up for my friend, for your friend, Sarah Kay.
Woo-wee! You guys, just give it up for those poets and those poems, please. My God, it's so fun. There is a word in Japanese for when you are not hungry, but you eat because your mouth is lonely. If you do not have a companion, it is assumed you must be looking for one. Nobody will believe you otherwise. I do not want to alarm you, but I have traveled through time. No, that sounds like a line in a poem, but is the plainest way I know to say it. Once, in the middle of a kiss, I arrived inside myself in the past, in the middle of some other kiss. And when I returned, was disoriented. Pulled my face back to find out whose beard this was. To be clear, it isn't that I forgot who I was kissing and mistook him for a man I once loved. I'm talking about time travel. I'm not trying to sound impressive. I don't have any control over it. It used to only drop me off in the past for a short visit, sometimes only long enough for a brisk walk along the river in a sensible sweater. Sometimes only long enough to catch a glimpse of a moment I was certain about anything. These days, it drops me off in, well, there's no other way to say it, but the future. And I do not want to alarm you, but I have reached the very end. Leaned my body as far forward as I can, the way you might off the edge of a stage in the dark. I have never been a person looking for an exit, but I have seen it now. The exit, I mean. That's about as close as I can get with words. It's very big. It stretches and stretches, but not like a sharp line or a line at all. No edge to run a hand against, just open, just leaning there, just precipice. It is okay to be scared, but I am not scared. I am sorry. There are already so many things I have done for the last time. I am sorry sometimes I forget to be here because I am there instead. Sorry sometimes there feels closer than any other future, and I know, I get it. There is no right way to be single, but I'm doing it wrong. I know what is warm can erase the memory of cold so quickly that you can't even imagine winter. I just wish anyone would believe me when I promise that I'm full. I'm going to do one more poem, and then we're going to make way for the lady of the hour. There is so much that can be said, and I'm sure someone's going to read an official bio, I assume? Question mark? Oh, maybe the bio happened. That's right, we've got a lot of bio. I just want more bio. In which case, I get to introduce her. In which case, I would like to say that I have known Franny Choi since she was 17 years old. And since the first day I met her, she has been curious and full of love and full of direction in the way that she moves through the world. And to watch her and to love her is such a joy and an honor. And one of the things that she has taught me is I used to think that poetry was entirely about observation and was always about writing about what it is and what it feels like. And I do still do that, but Franny is the first poet I ever saw not just observe what it is and what it feels like, but what it could be. And to make note of the work that that requires. It takes work to dream and plan and move towards what it could be. And that work doesn't happen unless we do it. And there's so much of that work in this new book. There's so much of that work in the way that Franny moves in the world. And so I want to read the one poem that absolutely only exists because of Franny and Franny's work in the world. In Japan, in October of 2020, more people died in the month of October by suicide than had died by COVID-19 for the entire year up until that point. And as a result, the government created a new position for a minister of loneliness. And when I learned about that, I wrote this. The Minister of Loneliness has abolished email. He is installing tin cans on every windowsill with a piece of string to someone else's window. Not several, just one. Each person, of course, does not need a lot of people to speak to, just the one. But the one must be reliable, must be available when needed. We are employing a buddy system now. Every day is a field trip to the Adulthood Museum, and we don't go home until everyone has been accounted for. The way you find your buddy is a nationwide game of Guess Who, where you sing the song that is always stuck in your head. Describe the movie you can't get through without crying, the hardest you've ever laughed, the outfit you wish you could pull off, and the only person who can spot you is the one you are assigned. All of Japan is a ball of string now. The economy has ground to a halt. Productivity is entirely impossible. Sometimes you go to talk into the can on your windowsill and the knot in the string accidentally gives you someone else's conversation. The fading fabric of someone else's loneliness evaporating into the air between buildings. You are allowed to eavesdrop, but so is everyone else. The Minister of Loneliness has moved all kindergartens to the ground floor of elderly assisted living centers. There are daily story hours, animal shelters across the street. The Minister of Loneliness has not abolished Valentine's Day, but has employed a nationwide bring enough for the class regulation, and nobody goes home empty-handed. The Minister of Loneliness has prescribed therapy for everyone. Daily walks through the many gardens, opportunities for meditation by a brook, in the rain, under falling blossoms, or along a snowy riverbank. Depending on the season, he has commissioned musicians, poets, actors to create concerts and radio plays and poetry readings to be pumped across the knotted tin can radio lines every evening. When you order dinner for one, the person who delivers it arrives with an appropriate ability and comfort level, dance instruction video, and 2 hours to spare. Grieving is encouraged and art making is rampant, but because of the knots, sometimes when you are expecting a visit from a grief counselor, the dance partner food delivery arrives instead. Sometimes they are the same person. The Minister of Loneliness isn't tired. He is the most popular man in the country. He has a crush on a middle school teacher across town, and everyone eavesdrops to hear the way he stumbles when she answers. Everyone is on the edge of their seats. Everyone forgets about dying because they can't wait to find out what happens next. Everyone has opinions. The minister has to start a hotline where people can call in to tell him their thoughts. The tin cans rattle nonstop. The minister is grateful for the advice but is nervous. His crush will hear the commotion. He is nervous. She prefers quiet, but he does not know for sure yet. He does not know what she is thinking. He does not know how she spends her Saturdays or how she prefers her tea or whether she likes to walk in the rain, but he likes wondering. When nobody is paying attention, when the windowsills are quiet, late at night awake, he does like to wonder. Thank you. Are you coming up to introduce, or am I introducing? Oh, hell yeah. You are all being so polite and quiet and well-behaved, and I need you to get a hell of a lot rowdier right now. Can I hear some energy in the building, please? This poet is out here teaching the people. She is teaching all of us what it means to move in this world with care and with consideration and intention and joy and love. She's an incredible poet. She's an incredible person. It is an honor to love her and read her and see her, and she's going to blow your mind. Please welcome to the stage, Miss Franny Choi.
Words are my job, but they're right now. I'm so grateful to all of you, and so grateful to everybody who are my favorite poets, and it means beyond the world to me to get to share this space with them and to be with them as I in celebration of this book. Hi, okay, I'm gonna read poems. Have something cool to say when you come up. Have something cool to say, come on. But I didn't. Okay, yeah. So it really is weird. It is a very stand-up thing. So I wrote this book. I started writing this book in the depths of grief and despair. And at a moment when it seemed like every sign that was arriving into my life was telling me, this is the end. We are headed toward the end, and that is the only option. And at some point when I was feeling this way and really knee-deep in it, my partner, who is very smart and very well-read, quoted a line from an essay, quoting, I think it was Public Enemy, and said, "It might be helpful to remember that the apocalypse happened a long time ago, and that our people have been surviving it for a long, long time." And it did bring me comfort to know that on the other side of this too, there would be a world that would go on, even if it was hard to imagine. And so I wrote this poem, and eventually the book. The world keeps ending, the world goes on. Before the apocalypse, there was the apocalypse of boats. Boats of prisoners. Boats cracking under sky iron. Boats making corpses bloom like algae on the shore. Before the apocalypse, there was the apocalypse of the bombed mosque. There was the apocalypse of the taxi driver warped by flame. There was the apocalypse of the leaving and the having left, of my mother unsticking herself from her mother's grave as the plane barreled down the runway. Before the apocalypse, there was the apocalypse of planes. There was the apocalypse of pipelines, legislating their way through sacred water, and the apocalypse of the dogs, before which was the apocalypse of the dogs and the hoses, before which the apocalypse of dogs and slave catchers, whose faces glowed by lantern light. Before the apocalypse of bees, the apocalypse of buses, border fence apocalypse, coat hanger apocalypse, apocalypse in the textbook's selective silences. There was the apocalypse of the settlement and the soda machine, the apocalypse of the settlement and the jars of scalps. There was the bedlam of the cannery, the radioactive rain, the chairless martyr demanding a name. I was born from an apocalypse and have come to tell you what I know, which is that the apocalypse began when Columbus praised God and lowered his anchor. It began when a continent was drawn into cutlets. It began when Kublai Khan told Marco, begin at the beginning. By the time the apocalypse began, the world had already ended. It ended every day for a century or two. It ended, and another ending world spun in its place. It ended, and we woke up and ordered Greek coffees, drew the hot liquid through our teeth as everywhere the apocalypse rumbled. The apocalypse remembered our dear, beloved apocalypse. It drifted slowly from the trees all around us, so loud we finally stopped hearing it. Catastrophe is next to godliness. I learned recently that the word catastrophe comes from the Greek term which just means plot twist, or a pivot, a shift, or a volta even, and that has blown my mind since I learned it. Catastrophe is next to godliness. Lord, I confess I want the clarity of catastrophe, but not the catastrophe. Like everyone else, I want a storm I can dance in. I want an excuse to change my life. The day Arun died, the sun was brighter than any sun. I answered the phone and a channel opened between my stupid head and heaven, or what was left of it. The blankness stared back, and I made sound after sound with my blood-wet gullet. Oh, unsayable, oh, tender and divine unsayable, I knew you then. You line straight to the planet's calamitous core. You moment, you intimate abyss I called sister for a good reason. When the bad thing happened, I saw every blade. And every year I find out what they've done to us, I shed another skin. I get closer to open air, true north. Lord, if I say, bless the cold water you throw on my face, does that make me a costume party? Am I grieved for comfort if I ask you not to kill my friends? If I beg you to press your heel against my throat? Please, not enough to ruin me, but just so I can almost see your face. I spent all this time figuring out exactly what poems I was going to read, and then I've come up here and it's all gone to shit, so that's good. I just want to say again, just like how unbelievably moving it is to be able to share this space and this event with poets who have taught me how to write poems, how to live as a poet in the world and believe that such a thing is possible, how to be in community with others, and how to shift power in the way that we live and write, and to be constantly thinking about that. It just like the Aracelis, Sarah, Jose, and Noah have like made me, you know. So can we actually just do another round of applause for that? I know. September 2001. We were punished and salt-licked. Oh, I guess I should say, in September 2001, I was in the 8th grade. And I think the great calamities of the world, sometimes I think at that time in my life, it was hard to tell the great calamities of the world apart from the great calamities of my life as just like as being an 8th grader, you know. So that's the context. September 2001. We were punished and salt-licked and wrecked with wanting we didn't understand. We were old enough to be obsessed with death, to dream of baseball bats and crushed skulls, to tongue scripture and lift our wetness toward extinction. It was the year 2001, and all-day kids got pulled out of class, so slow and dreamlike it was like they dissolved, like the last scene in The Sandlot, boy after boy forever fading into a VHS afterlife. At lunch, Jackie said, "We finally get our own war." And everyone knew it was bad of her to say so and laughed anyway. I was old enough to have wanted to run away from home, old enough to be grateful for my American certificates, to let the prophecies of plague string my spine with lights. Everything I didn't know was a throatful of something hot and bothered, the hair crawling up my calves, the shock that flew through me when Alex drew a picture of sex, the wreckage of birds I became when he felt me up in the hallway. I didn't know what to call that feeling, only knew that I was on the edge of something as impressive and glorious as catastrophe, counting my life mostly in a series of small, terrible stories. Elsewhere, children are being beaten in factories, beaten if they don't speak Japanese, stripped from their bones if they're born in the wrong country. That year, I fumbled everywhere for some authorized trajectory through my short-legged life. Any book could whisper a word to me that would name it. The exact shiver buzzing at my edges when Night lifted her foreign dress, when Omar's soccer friend called me a chink, or when the church girls laughed until I was sticky with fire. You have to understand. It was 2001. We had made it through the prophesied apocalypse, with its computerized rapture and bunkers full of pudding. Instead, there had been fireworks, though we'd been promised war. On television, face after face was saying, "I am an American. I wanted to fuck, then shoot the man who spoke to my mother like a child. I was so afraid of seeing dead people that I saw them everywhere. It was the new age. We finally had our own war. How can I explain the things and things and things I did wrong? I was never any good at telling the difference between what wanted me and what wanted me gone." Unloved poem. If I call myself unlovable, I am, practically. If I say it enough times, unlovable. Then, like practical magic, I'm hollow as old garlic. I'm distance-skinned. I'm a long, mean package, a terror dyke, a nag, a squinting slut-spun hag. It's easy, really. It's the simplest thing. I do it in my sleep. I have invasive dreams, after all. They infect my lover's skull. They crank our jaws into 4 slow hammers. After all, I'm made of distance. Plus the beautiful things people have tried to put inside me. They fall out the bottom. No one can kill me with kindness. No one can reach me through the sound of such ancestral ugly. Sound of my grandmother's gagging a half-century ago. Did they? My grandmother beating her stomach with her fists, drinking medicine, then poisoned. Did she? I'm distance-skinned. No one can put a story inside me but me. If not even my memories love me enough to stay, then fine. Cut off the hands that keep me married to any history. See? Like magic, then. I call myself a rotted out bulb, and soon enough I'm hauling out the wet stuff, cracking my compost heart under a shovel's faceless verdict. Sometimes a highway opens between my hearts and I run suicides until I'm lactic. Sometimes I wonder how long I'd have to run to reach the last generation where one of us felt loved and I crumple into carcass. I come from a short line of women who were handed husbands as salvation from rape. I'm a short lie of a woman whom men have wanted to tear apart with their good, strong hands. I mean, same. If I love anyone enough to know they deserve better than me and stay anyway, then what? If I love myself enough to beat fistfuls of poison into me who hurts me, oh well, I'm just imitating the rocket's red glare. I'm just covering the old song. Unlovable is open source. Anyone can make up new verses to sing it. Here's the part where I list the times my white ex hurt my feelings, or my white teacher, my white therapist, the white boy who put the white boy who put his dick inside me, the boy I liked too much, the woman who let me fall in love with her too fast. Of course, there's the boy who died by accident and left me only able to write beautiful poems about his leaving. Pretty only love things I threw and threw into the endless distances inside me, highways of quiet. Oh, I've been hard to love in America. I've been slow to speak in America. I've been undoubtedly an American and done practically nothing to stop it. I've been some version of my grandmother's, slinking around the floor of the GI bar, shivering in the bathroom of the GI bar. I've been some version of my grandmother, making child after child for a loveless man. I've been her, and I've been the version of her that lives in an opportune land, that chooses who she loves, that sits by a window, writing, drinking water with Tulsi, breaking chocolate with her clean hands, that goes to school after school and collects heart and heart and heart sweetly brimming in her well-oiled forearms and still has the gall to be unlovable. Oh, my badly loved grandmothers, I kin you to me facelessly. I wrap all our deaths around my shoulders like a fox pelt coat. Grandmother across oceans and ages, grandmother across the border, grandmother carried off by soldiers, grandmother carried into endless highway by disease or dog or dawn's unrelenting purge. I rap until I'm made of grandmother, until the ritual musk of their dreams is sprouting from my skull. Sandalwood, ambergris, copper of blood, coin copper, clay of approaching dusk. I am loved by pheromone, if nothing else, by accident at best. Oh, beasts of fortune, I am loved sweetest by the horrors of blood, by my own and by ours. Oh, blessed root rot, by ours.
You're so good.
I also want to just take this moment to thank my editor, Jenny. To be able to work with a queer Asian American poetry editor as big press has been like the joy and the dream of my life. So Jenny, this book would not be possible without you. I really, really thank you. This is a poem that was written in the summer of 2020. Aaron says the world is upside down. And it's true. The cops are shooting rubber bullets at even the blonde journalists now. The Target is on fire, and the Wells Fargo's shining face kicked in by white boys with gas masks and hammers trying to jumpstart their war. And yet, the upside-down world is also, by definition, the same world. Like the map that hung in the hallway of the house where I lived 3 or 4 lives ago, Argentina at the top, Greenland kissing its toes. It was a metaphor, someone explained, for seeing things another way. So, yes, if it is true that another killer cops killed another black child's father, another unauthorized chokehold, another no charge again, if once more, riot gear again, budget, once again, gas station, more flames, more who's to blame gets blamed again, if again and again it is the same, then it holds that the opposite must also be true. The so-called opposite world of food drop-off stations, of phone trees, of bailouts and carry an extra mask, the world of kneeling for a stranger's gift of milk to flush the tear gas, the world of saying a thing in unison, so clear it drills a hole through to the other side of what is possible, so clear and wholly inverted we realize it's been here all along. O kingdom of fire, O kingdom of food, with the same mouth we take your blessings, with the same mouth we pronounce you, come. I think I'm going to do just two more. Yeah. I want to read this one because I think I had Aracelis, I think I had you, like a little mini Aracelis sitting on my shoulder as I was writing it, just telling me, like, be more honest, be more tender, like show up more fully to each line. So thank you, Aracelis, for helping me write this poem. It's one that I wrote, I wrote it after the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, the Supreme Court confirmation hearings. It's called Prayer for the Untranslated Testimony. Midnight, and I'm sitting on the back steps, looking at the leaves and listening to the sound a boy is making into the night with the peak of his lungs somewhere in my neighborhood. He's stretching the air, and I do not know what it means, this sound. It sounds, I think, like a name, like the name of my friend Fatima, but with different letters, I think. Or maybe it sounds like a command, a long and desperate spell which he makes of the air again and again, and now growing longer as he shouts it. And if I ask my heart, rude translator though it is, to read back the sound, what I hear rippling from the quiet floor of my chest is, let me in, or open it. And now, in my chest's vocabulary, there's also a door. There's also a blue light in the top window and a face that will not appear. And some of my friends I know have names that sound like this. Some, like, I am here, like, why won't you answer, like, why can't you see me? And they are, mostly, not boys, but do grow long and blue lit at midnight. They are spells, the women I know. And today a woman sat in front of a panel of men who, I have to try to believe, were too once boys who shivered in the yard. A woman sat and had to say again and again, it happened, and watch the glass panes of the once boys' faces remain unlit and only echoing back with their short vocabularies, are you sure, are you sure, are you sure? So tonight, reaching up to hold hands with these leaves stretching onto the back steps, I say, please, let this spell grow legs. Let my sisters' names grow long as their hair, long as they need to. Let their names rattle the night air with their incessant lungs. Let the sounds of their names burn blue in the night. Let even their ugliest memories be named after the daughters of prophets. Please, if there is a God, named for the humble undersides of these leaves, somehow not yet dead, let the names of my sisters make all the doors on my street fly open. Let every tree sleeping in our chests claw awake and rush out to answer that call. I'm going to read one more, and then I think that we'll have time for a few questions, a little bit of chatting. I guess if you're the kind of person who needs to think for a few minutes about what you're going to say and practice it in your head before saying it in front of a room full of strangers, I count myself as one of those people, and this is your warning. But I'm going to read another poem that takes place in the future. Really is a fun thing to try to navigate, flipping through a book with one pinky. But I'm doing a great job. This is called Dispatches for a Future Great-Great-Granddaughter. And it's inspired by a piece by Alexis Pauline Gumbs, where she imagines a descendant writing back to her. I just keep, throughout writing this book, I kept thinking about a line from a Rebecca Solnit essay where she said, it's actually pretty easy to imagine the end of the world. What's harder is to imagine that it might go on, that some version of it might continue. And I've just been thinking about how that act of imagining shapes my sense of responsibility. If you say, oh, we're fucked, you kind of let yourself off the hook. And so I was trying to imagine this long descendant from a few generations down talking to me and trying to imagine what she might have to say to me as part of that exercise. So, Dispatches from a Future Great-Great-Granddaughter. It's in a few parts. Thanks for listening. Dear improbable you, what was it like to live so gridded, so track changes, so carceral, somnambulant, asphyxiating at split screens while nation glowered with rot? What was it like to slouch numb-faced here and watch your image get dirty with algorithm elsewhere, shuffle into destiny's schlep? Did your pulse come haptic? Did you pay money for food? Did you dial 3 numbers and salute Genosi dares with crest-whitened incisors when they knocked? Did you pray ever? Hope? Any? Or did you take a number, snatch what scraps you could and pet your children? Everything was happening and you were alive. You were alive then. What did you do? Great-great-grandmother, I'm writing to you under chartreuse skies, after the great verticality, and after the multi-wars and their various rebrandings, and after tipping points numbers 1 through 379, and after finally the very long, very slow dispersal of things. I wonder if you can imagine it. The tall, tall oceans, the smell of sick gas, weirdly sweet, and sani spray, like if toothpaste were a vegetable. The rhythm of jump dancers on the boardwalks, water swinging in barrels, grass-fed grass. There are 12 different siren patterns, one for each kind of crisis. 2 honks for fires, 3 short trills for a runaway brain. A loneliness emergency is a low swoop followed by a chirp, and so on. There are crises every day. And there's also bread bubbling on the counter, pickled beans, a cat who comes home. What I want you to know is that we're okay. Hurting, but okay. We're surviving, though it's true. We don't know what that means exactly. Some rituals I do to imagine what you knew about freedom. Move my fingers over glass, swipe like a question. Swallow a bullet and stay silent until it passes. Touch my lips to silicone, sand, Walk into the ocean and let the waves kick me over, then dry in the sun and lick the salt from my forearms. Sit facing a friend and hold our palms together without touching. Take turns completing the phrase, it could have been that. Draw my own face from memory. Ask a friend to bind me with rope until I can't move. Tense up until I cry, then laugh until the ties loosen, until everything loosens. This is the last bit. Dear great-great-grandsomeone, under a graphless sky, I'm writing to say thank you for healing what you could, for passing down what you couldn't. I'm plentituding what I can. What I can't, I let tunnel me like roughage, like a so-called bullet, like a slur I won't daycare. What you gave me isn't wisdom, and I have no wisdom in return, just handfuls of livestock. Every day, a sky is, miles are. We sing, entangled in the root world, answers, and together we're making something of it, something of all those questions you left. can be anything related to some of the poems that you heard, or completely unrelated, or whatever is on your mind, but I would love to hear from you. The teacher part of my brain is like, maybe we should have everybody brainstorm, free write for a few minutes, and then we can all, discuss in small groups and report back. But no, we're not doing that. Okay, 2 questions. Yeah, time for 2 questions. Yeah, anyone? Yes. Hello.
Hi. I know you were in a collective, I believe, out in the Twin Cities, and I was curious how sort of like that collective work you guys did, how that translates, now that you're more of a solo poet, so to speak.
Yeah, so the collective, the Dark Noise Collective, we've always been based in a bunch of cities, and it's true that for a while, so it's 6 of us, Erin Samuels, Jamila Woods, Fatima Asker, Dinesh Smith, and Nate Marshall, and we have been gathering like once or twice a year, pre-pan, for like 10 years now, literally since 2012, and it's true that in the first few years we thought it was going to be like, I don't know, I guess we thought we were going to be like the Wu-Tang Clan or something, I don't know, but we thought we would like be more like perform as a group, do a lot of external things, make art together, and then like put on these shows. And we were young and ambitious. We had a lot of energy that has now left our bodies in our 30s. But I think actually there was a turning point in our collective where one of the members of Dark Noise had sort of like a big medical emergency crisis, and so and was sort of like, oh no, you guys, like I can't do Dark Noise anymore because I have all this like stuff going on in my personal life. And we were like, well, if that's the case, then we need to change what Dark Noise is, because if you can't do this collective because you need to take care of yourself, then like the collective isn't working. So we sort of like reoriented and stopped really doing stuff publicly, and actually just became like a space where we were like very intentionally loving each other and supporting each other's work. And so we still gather, and all of their names, I've hidden not hidden, but they're sort of like Easter eggs. Each of their names appears in the book at some point. And they're my first readers and my loves and my family. But we are not, as we once thought, the Wu-Tang Clan. So thank you for that question. Maybe one more? Yes, in the back.
So I'm really interested in how like soft science in this new book just feels and I wanted to ask about like how the process was, and specifically like how you approach the speaker versus self, because I feel like they might be closer in this book than it is in soft science, because I don't think you're a cyborg.
I got some news for you. Well, no, I mean, but actually, the cyborg. So the question was for anybody who couldn't quite hear. Well, thank you for that question. The question was about the relationship between that book and this one, and the kind of like persona work in soft science versus like a sort of like a more autobiographical speaker maybe in this new book. I mean, the funny thing is that all of the cyborg says like poems in that book are all just me, you know. And I think that I was trying in that book to kind of make the case that the speaker is always like already a cyborg, you know. It's already like a hybrid form of like me and like the mechanics of the poem and like the version of the character that lives in the poem, already like even as a metaphor for like the way that as an Asian American queer person, my selfhood was bound up in like the machine of things, and like the sort of like construction of identities, in addition to the way that like Asian Americans and Asian people generally are sort of like closely associated with technology and like the future, right? And so, so that the persona was really just a way of being able to say something about how I understood myself. And I think that in this book, it's true in some ways. It's like I guess like a closer to the I that is in the poems is maybe a little bit closer to the I that is I. But I also think that, well, one, I think that maybe that has to do with the fact that I kind of I sort of went from writing an Asian American book to writing like a Korean American book, and so instead of there were like certain kinds of like particularities about my family's history that sort of cropped up, but then also it's weird because I think that in some ways this book is like one that feels a lot less personal because it's less about like the weird interactions that happen in my body like during like moments of intense intimacy, and more about sort of like what happens in my body as I'm looking out at this larger, as I'm like listening to the news and understanding myself as part of this like big we, and understanding myself sometimes like to be like not part of like a we that is kind of put upon me. And so yeah, I'm not sure. I think though the secret I would say is that whenever I say I in a poem, it's not me, but it's like 100% me also. And so I guess with that, I'll just say thank you all so much for being here and for gathering for this book and for poems. And Sarah's doing something. Oh, I love it. It's staging the photograph. So it's like. Give it up for Sarah Kay, everybody. And gathering for this book, and I can't wait to talk to you at the back table where I'll be signing books. Thank you so much.
So please give her a moment to settle in back there. We do ask that folks begin forming a line so that we can begin breaking down the space. We do have additional copies of Franny's books, The World Keeps Ending and The World Goes On, and Soft Science, and Noah's Cut to Bloom, and Sarah's No Matter the Wreckage, and Aracelis, The Black Maria, and Kingdom Animalia, and Jose's Citizen Illegal, available for purchase at our check-in desk. Yo, it's the holidays. Let's buy some books, huh? For those doing this on YouTube, you can find a link to purchase books in the description. That is all for me. Thanks again, everyone, for coming out tonight. Please join me in giving the poem.
Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thank you, of course.